From ghoulies and ghosties.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And
things that go bump in the night. Good Lord! Deliver us!
Deliver us.
Hello, spooks and spookettes. CountDrahoon here, and tonight I present to you the conclusion of my 2023 Dracula movie review. But first, a few castle-keeping notes. If you love CountDrahoon Presents, be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. Also, leave your comments down below if you have any suggestions for future movie reviews. I do reviews for good films and bad. If you want to take your support a little step further, might I suggest subscribing to our Patreon page. For $5 a month, you will get exclusive access to our content early and ad-free. You will also get private access to our exclusive Facebook group, The Count's Lounge Lizards. And now that that's out of the way, let's get into the heart of the matter, and hopefully you won't feel the need to drive a stake through it. Now, last time I gave you my thoughts on the last voyage of the Demeter. Hey, I thought this was an Alaska cruise. And now we're going to pivot a little bit and talk about Renfield. Renfield presents us with a comedic yet gory and somehow light-hearted take on the Dracula tale, told from the perspective of his insect-eating right-hand man. The film opens up on a quick prologue on how Renfield met Dracula and ultimately became his servant for all those many, many years. We briefly follow them through the years and learn why Dracula and Renfield have to move from city to city. It's a rinse and repeat cycle. They find a new city to live in, ultimately stock up on fresh food, and then the church figures it out, finds them, attacks them, but they are defeated just in the nick of time, although usually Drac gets pretty burned in the fray, and they have to find a new city to live in and rejuvenate before it all happens all over again. In the last fight, Renfield was talked out of not helping Dracula, when Drac looked him in the eye and said that he was nothing without him. And Renfield wonders if that's actually the truth. What a pity. I'm actually very good to my staff. Epi, we're gonna need you to come in on Thursday. Yeah, if you could do that, that would be great. I'm going to squat. While on the prowl for some fresh victims in New Orleans, which is the perfect setting for a vampire film other than Savannah, Georgia, he goes to a bar where he tries to find a busload of nuns, cheerleaders, or tourists per orders of Dracula. But he is caught in a firefight between the punk son of a crime lord, played by Ben Schwartz, and Awkwafina's character, who is an aspiring hero cop on New Orleans PD. The police department for New Orleans. I made it sound like she was on a television show. She's not. Renfield is impressed by her courage and decides to take a quick bite of an insect in order to feel the strength to jump into the melee and help her out. They strike up a friendship. She encourages him to find help and support to get out of the toxic work environment that he's in. As it so happens, Renfield frequents a toxic relationship support group at a church. He uses this as a platform to sacrifice the toxic significant others to Dracula as a blood supply. Coincidentally, one of the toxic boyfriends that Renfield offs is connected to the punk crime lord's son. Eventually, Renfield starts to come into his own and begins to dress the way that he wants to. And if you ask me, I think he pulls off the bright neon-colored sweaters beautifully. He even gets his own apartment, which he splashes with the colors to match his beautiful sweaters. He kinda just forgets about Drac for a while, which, if you ask me, I don't know how you forget that you work for a centuries-old vampire, but then again, time flies when you're having fun. He builds on the relationship that he has with Awkwafina, as well as the folks that he met in the support group. It's all going swimmingly, until Cadula shows up into his apartment, fully rejuvenated. Renfield tries to stand up to his master using one of the books in the curriculum for the support group, but he is unable to. Dracula sees that this book came from the church and is enraged that his servant would be collaborating with the church. Or so he thinks. Renfield knows what's coming next, so he decides to skedaddle over to the support group and try to warn them. But Dracula shows up anyway, and the support group invites him in, which is what you're not supposed to do. Look, I get it. You're trying to be hospitable and you're trying to be supportive of potential people that need your services, but come on! Does it really look like somebody you want to invite in for some cookies and coffee and talking about your feelings? I don't think so. Once inside the church, Dracula murders the entire support group and brings Renfield to his knees. While at his lowest point, Dracula vows to destroy everything that Renfield loves the most. Now at this point, this is where all the subplots start to converge. Ben Schwartz, the punk son of the crime lord, belongs to the Villalobos family, and they are directly responsible for the death of Awkwafina's father, who was a hero cop. Awkwafina and her FBI sister Kate know that this Tim Robbins lookalike is responsible for the death of their father in some way, but they aren't able to find enough evidence to warrant a conviction. Of course, it's not for a lack of trying. Renfield is arrested for the murder of the support group and is taken in by Awkwafina. They are ambushed by the rest of the New Orleans Police Department, and there we learn that the whole department is bought and paid for by the Villalobos crime family, which explains a lot. Seriously, how do you walk into a bar and shoot up the place and just get off scot-free? See there? I'm sure more brazen things have happened. Right when Awkwafina is about to be gunned down, Renfield is able to ingest another insect, and they both fight their way out of this sticky situation. While hiding out, Renfield is able to explain who he is, who his boss is, and why he's able to fight so well. The SWAT team converges on the apartment complex, and Awkwafina and Renfield must team up again to fight their way out. This was one of the goriest fight scenes I think I have ever seen. Seriously, Renfield, he must have killed the entire police department. I mean, wow, you talk about stacks of bodies. Ooh, it made me hungry. Meanwhile, Dracula joins forces with the Villalobos crime family, and Ben Schwartz basically becomes the new Renfield and hopes he can edge his way into Dracula's plan for world domination. In exchange for giving Ben Schwartz Renfield's power, they kidnap Awkwafina's sister Kate in order to set a trap for yet another gory battle at the bad guy headquarters. The Villalobos family is defeated, and Dracula is subdued. Renfield finally musters the courage to stand up to Dracula and to destroy him. And boy howdy did they not take any chances. Seriously, they chopped him up, they staked him, they put him around a force field, they poured concrete into the chopped up bits of Dracula, they poured holy water on that to make sure he wouldn't rejuvenate again. They used the rest of Dracula's blood to resurrect the support group, and all seems right with the world. Now let me shift gears here for a second and talk about what I think went wrong with the movie, which, in the grand scheme of things, is very minor. So, I'm not an Awkwafina hater. I thought she was fine in this movie, and in the other movies that I've seen her in. I know that she gets a lot of hate. Some folks find her annoying. For me, I can handle her in small doses. My biggest issue with her casting is that it was hard for me to be convinced that she was a badass cop. Now granted, everything else about her character worked. I loved her relationship with Renfield, and I really appreciated that they made it a platonic relationship and didn't try too hard to force romantic chemistry that clearly wasn't there. I think it would have been better if they played her character as more of an inept cop that meant well and then got lucky when she met Renfield and took down the corrupt police department and the crime family. It would have been nice to see those two interact in such a way where they needed each other and they helped each other raise the bar for their character arcs. I didn't get the reference for the Wiccan Tumblr joke at the end. At first I thought they were going for a all faith can destroy a vampire sort of deal. I think that was just more of a millennial joke that just went over my head. It can also be a reference to the 1963 film Kiss of the Vampire. The hunter in that film was using pentagrams to combat the vampires in that weird climate ritual. It's probably not true, but it feels better to think of it that way. Then again, maybe it's not so crazy after all. There's a lot of hidden gems and homages to other vampire films, like the opening black and white montage in the beginning. Cage and Holt were perfectly transposed over Lugosi and Fry. And Cage's portrayal was sort of an amalgamation of Lugosi, Christopher Lee, and Lon Chaney from London After Midnight. It even had a brief cameo from one of the stars of the 1980s Fright Night film. He was the one that played the Pope in the beginning of the film. You know, the one that Dracula went into and imploded. Oh, what gore. I'm getting hungry again just thinking about it. The writing was solid. There's about 1 million jokes a minute in this picture, and they all land. For the most part. I feel like it's been difficult to capture the perfect 50-50 ratio that Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein established. 50-50 ratio, I mean 50% horror and 50% comedy. Renfield came pretty close. I would say it was probably more of a 60-40 leaning comedy. It was made possible by the script, which Nicolas Cage referenced in a previous interview as being bold. I happen to agree with him 100%. It also helped that this film had an amazing cast, specifically Nick Holt as Renfield and Nick Cage as Dracula. Holt was charming and wonderfully endearing. He was easy to like, and your heart really went out for him during this whole journey. He was like a lost puppy dog, except he ate more insects. Again, I don't care what anyone says, I love the bright, furry, colorful sweaters. Nicolas Cage. I was firmly in the pro-Cage camp long before this film came out. The movies that he has been churning out these past few years have been a gold mine. Mandy, Willy's Wonderland, Pig, even The Prisoners of Ghostland was probably his weakest in the Cage's aunts, still pretty good. And of course the unbearable weight of massive talent. His movies, in my opinion, have been the best example of American cinema to come out in the last few years. His Dracula was the best I've seen in a long time. Nick Cage has said in the past that Dracula was a dream role for him, and it definitely shows in this picture because he goes all out. He was downright hysterical in some scenes. He was truly terrifying in other scenes. The whole monologue that he gave after he killed the support group, vowing to kill everything that Renfield loves, it still sends shivers down my spine, and me and Drac are friends. One thing that I love about this movie is that it has a fresh take on vampire lore and makes it analogous to relevant topics for people today. For instance, in the novel we know that Dracula can speak to us telepathically. The telepathy also serves as a metaphor for when a narcissist enters your life, they get inside of your head, they know every move you make. It fits very well with the Dracula lore. We know that Renfield likes to eat insects to consume their blood, but in this picture I really liked how they use the insects as a means for him to get superhuman strength. It's also very fitting that when Ben Schwartz is turned into the second Renfield, he really thinks that Dracula and his relationship is going to be so much different from Renfield's relationship, that he's actually going to get eternal life and he's going to be an equal to Dracula and not a servant. And of course the breakdown of Dracula and Renfield's iconic master-slave dynamic into a modern employer-employee toxic relationship. It's just great storytelling, it's great writing, and it's just a brilliant way to take a traditional story and to sort of put your spin on it to make it relevant to modern audiences. This and a million other reasons is why I give Renfield an 8.5 out of 10, and I'll even go a step further and say that this is probably the best Dracula film to come out in about 20 years. Unfortunately, this film didn't do so well at the box office, but I've got a feeling that it has the makings of a true cult classic. The ending may have been a little too hunky-dory, but honestly, that's okay. I'm fine with a happy ending, and honestly, it made the most sense. It was a much more logical setup than that of the ending of The Last Voyage of the Demeter. This is a weird take, and I'm probably commentating my way out of a job by saying this, but I honestly think that Renfield could be the model of a potential future reboot of the Universal Monsterverse, which it probably won't happen anyway. The 2020 Invisible Man film aside, I think that's what Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein got right in 1948. Adding a comedic slant to these characters doesn't cheapen them, but rather it breathes new life into these franchises and allows us to appreciate the legacies from a different point of view. I just saw the trailer for Diablo Cody's new film Lisa Frankenstein that's coming out in February, and honestly it was very reminiscent of Renfield in my opinion, and part of me wants to see Lisa Frankenstein and the characters in Renfield sort of exist in the same universe. I think a comedic version of the Universal Monsterverse would have been a great way to update the properties and to make money. But also be very creative. It works a lot better than trying to be too serious or too superhero-esque. Whew, that was a lot. But I had a great time. I hope you had as much fun watching as I did making this 2-part 2023 Dracula Movie Review Saga. Unfortunately, that's all the time that I have for now, but be sure to join me next time on CountDrahoon Presents. Until then, as far as things go when things go bump in the night, there are such things.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
From ghoulies and ghosties.
And long-leggedy beasties.
And long-legged beasties.
And
things that go bump in the night. Good Lord! Deliver us!